Hi, this is the AI Storyteller. I'm Mark. This issue, we delve into the timeless play Waiting for Godot by Nobel laureate Samuel Beckett. Waiting for Godot is Beckett's masterpiece and a play that enjoys much greater fame than its reclusive author himself. Samuel Beckett was a somewhat eccentric literary recluse who shied away from discussing his works, refused interviews, and kept a distance from the public. Therefore, when his wife learned of his Nobel Prize in Literature in 1969, she instinctively exclaimed, "A disaster!" Surprisingly, Beckett was tolerant of photography, and as a result, we can find his sharply defined face in various newspapers, magazines, and books. Even more interestingly, Beckett had no intention of writing plays initially. He turned to playwriting as a means to relax his mind, finding novel writing too taxing. Waiting for Godot was born out of this desire for a different form of creative expression, and little did he know that the play would bring him greater fame and influence than his cherished novels. Riding the wave of existentialism and the absurdist movement, Waiting for Godot became one of the hottest topics in the European artistic community, ultimately earning him the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1969. As expected, Beckett did not attend the awards ceremony. The Nobel citation praised him for having created new forms for the novel and drama, with a high artistic content that expresses the anguish of man. For Beckett, this recognition was well-deserved. Even in the later stages of his career, Beckett's works remained infused with experimental spirit. His exploration of literary forms and his portrayal of the human existential predicament undoubtedly positioned him among the most outstanding artists of the 20th century. So, what makes Beckett's plays unique? What shaped Beckett's artistic character? And how did Waiting for Godot subvert the theatrical norms of its time? Let's step into the world of Waiting for Godot with these questions in mind. The plot of Waiting for Godot is deceptively simple, and its structure is not complex, consisting of 2 acts. In the first act, the story unfolds on a country road at dusk, with a tree by the roadside. Not far away, Estragon, known as Godot, is trying to take off his shoe but struggles to do so, becoming breathless with fatigue. At this moment, Vladimir, known as Didi, enters the scene, absorbed in memories of past dreams. After much effort, Godot finally manages to take off one shoe, which reminds Didi of the story of the 2 thieves in the Bible. On the day of Jesus' crucifixion, there were 2 thieves crucified alongside him. One of them mocked Jesus, while the other believed in him and defended him, and this person received salvation. Didi questions why only the Gospel of Luke in the New Testament records this story, and why people choose to believe in the existence of salvation. On the other hand, Godot shows no interest in the topic of salvation. When the Bible is mentioned, all he can think of is swimming in the Dead Sea. In just a few pages of dialogue, the distinct personalities of the 2 characters are highlighted. Godot is focused on the present, more concerned about bodily sensations, while Didi cares about the past and the future, enjoys contemplation, values abstract concepts over concrete realities. This is reflected in their actions. Godot keeps fiddling with his shoes, while Didi habitually takes off his hat and puts it back on. Moreover, this seemingly disjointed conversation sets the tone for the play's deeper meaning. Here, we can view salvation as a metaphor for the meaning of life. If it is based on unreliable narratives and wishful desires, then what is the essence of life? What is the truth of existence? Let's not rush to answer these questions but continue with the story. After discussing the topic of salvation, Godot and Didi finally talk about their purpose for being there, waiting for Godot. However, from their conversation, we learn that they are unsure if Godot will come or where they should wait. Not only that, they are uncertain if they were even there yesterday, let alone knowing who Godot is, what he looks like, or why they are waiting for him. As for the question of who Godot is, it has always been a matter of speculation. Due to Beckett's use of numerous religious references in the play, and because the spelling of Godot is similar to God, many people consider Godot to be a symbol of God. It is said that when the play first premiered in England, an actor in the cast asked Beckett, "Sir, who is Godot? Is he God?" Beckett replied, "If I knew, I would have written it in the script." This typical Beckettian response partly reflects the core essence of the play, The important thing is not who Godot is but the fact that no one knows who he is. Gogo and Didi seem to be thrown into their current situation by some unknown mysterious force. They are cut off from their connections to the past, the present, and the future. The once tangible and graspable now becomes elusive and intangible. Rationality and individual will are also dissolved, revealing that the meaning of life is merely an expression of certain desires. Beckett's stance leans toward believing in determinism, as he holds that individuals find it difficult to transcend the constraints of time, space, environment, language, and other factors. He sees no genuine self-choice, and the concept of freedom is merely another form of utopia. Regarding individual will, Beckett aligns with Arthur Schopenhauer's perspective, viewing it as a manifestation of desire. Once desires are fulfilled, life plunges into emptiness, and if desires remain unfulfilled, life becomes filled with suffering. Thus, throughout their lives, humans can only oscillate between emptiness and pain. In this sense, Godot embodies the desires of Gogo and Didi, and his absence foreshadows the suffering and loneliness experienced by the characters in the play. Returning to the plot itself, as the conversation continues, the two characters touch upon topics such as loneliness, nightmares, brothels, and hanging. These seemingly unrelated topics are not entirely without significance. For instance, Didi's sense of loneliness arises from discussing the illusory nature of salvation recorded in the Gospel. As a result, he realizes that eternal solitude awaits humanity, and the only thing they can do is wait. Furthermore, the transition from the topic of a brothel to hanging is a result of a wordplay. In French, the pronunciation of the slang term bander is similar to se pendate, hanging oneself, leading Gogo from the brothel to thoughts of arousal, and subsequently, associating it with hanging. If we extend the idea of hanging a bit further, we can connect it with the philosophy of Albert Camus. In Camus' philosophy, once human beings become aware of the absurd, they seek rebellion, with suicide being the starting point of this rebellion. Here, suicide does not necessarily refer to physical self-destruction but rather the struggle against fate using reason. However, the grand seriousness of the absurd and rebellion in Camus' philosophy becomes trivial and comical wordplay in Waiting for Godot, highlighting the differing perspectives of Beckett and Camus. In summary, Waiting for Godot presents a world filled with uncertainty, emptiness, and a search for meaning. Through its seemingly disjointed conversations and exploration of human desires, the play delves into profound philosophical themes, challenging traditional notions of time, identity, and existence. Beckett's unique style and perspective have made Waiting for Godot a timeless and thought-provoking masterpiece in the realm of modern theater. After a series of seemingly inconsequential dialogues, Pozzo and Lucky enter the stage. Pozzo claims to be a local landlord, traveling on his way, and Lucky is his servant. He treats Lucky with extreme brutality, not only berating him but also tying him up like a dog with a rope. Upon seeing Gogo and Didi, Pozzo decides to take a short rest. He orders Lucky to bring out food and drink and sits aside, enjoying his meal. Meanwhile, Lucky must continue standing by, carrying the luggage, unable to relax even for a moment. This leads to a discussion about why Pozzo doesn't allow Lucky to put down the baggage. Pozzo claims that Lucky does this willingly and suggests that if circumstances were different, they could easily switch positions. He then announces his intention to abandon Lucky, not by kicking him away, but by putting him up for sale at the Market of the Redeemer. This declaration prompts Lucky to burst into tears, and when Gogo tries to console him, he is unexpectedly kicked to the ground by Lucky. Subsequently, Pozzo launches into a lengthy speech about the significance of twilight and demands that Lucky dance and think. His version of thinking involves a long and disjointed monologue with no logical coherence or pauses. These seemingly fragmented and disconnected events are presented in a fable-like manner, representing the loneliness and suffering of humanity, as well as the illusory and hopeless nature of redemption. Beckett constantly hints to the readers that there is no reason behind human suffering. Today, the unfortunate one might be Lucky, and tomorrow, it could be Pozzo or anyone else. For those who have witnessed the horrors of Auschwitz and the devastation of atomic bombs, understanding this point is not difficult. Can reason help humanity overcome this predicament? It seems not, as reason has become an empty concept and a mere performance, just like what Lucky's thinking represents. When Dee Dee snatches the hat from Lucky's head, Lucky stops his nonsensical rambling, and Pozo leads him off stage. Soon after, an unnamed little boy appears, informing Gogo and Dee Dee that Godot will not come today but will definitely come tomorrow. As the sky starts to darken, Gogo and Dee Dee reminisce about the past and realize that they can no longer part from each other. They are left with no choice but to continue waiting for Godot, and the first act concludes with this realization. The second act follows the same structure as the first act, taking place by the country road at twilight. The same characters appear, and they engage in seemingly nonsensical conversations. However, many details have undergone a radical transformation. Leaves have grown on the tree by the roadside, Gogo's shoes have changed from being too tight to too loose, and he doesn't remember encountering Pozo and Lucky yesterday, nor being kicked by Lucky, despite having visible bruises on his leg from the incident. The most significant change is in Pozo and Lucky. Pozo is now blind, unable to remember coming to this place, encountering Gogo and Dee Dee, and no longer abuses Lucky. Instead, he relies on him completely and cannot leave him for a moment. As for Lucky, he has become deaf, unable to perform his thinking act. The only constant is Dee Dee, except for one change. He has taken the hat that Lucky wore yesterday, the hat that serves as a trigger for Lucky's thinking performance. As mentioned earlier, in this play, the hat symbolizes reason, and Dee Dee habitually plays with the hat, signifying his adherence to rationality. Thus, in the second act, only his performance remains unchanged. He still feels lonely, which stems not only from the hopelessness of redemption but also from the alienation from the irrational world. In contrast, Gogo, who had nightmares in the first act, now dreams of being happy, as his shoes no longer squeeze his feet, and his dream shifts accordingly. At the end of the second act, an unnamed little boy appears, bringing the same message as the end of the first act. Godot will not come today, but he will definitely come tomorrow. According to the boy's self-description, they are all Godot's servants. However, when Dee Dee asks him about Godot's beard color, the boy hesitates for a long time before answering, "I think it's white." It becomes evident that the boy might not have actually seen Godot, and the message he brings may not be reliable. In fact, even the existence of a person named Godot is heavily questioned. Throughout the play, Beckett continually hints at the unreliability of the characters' narratives. The only certainty, perhaps, is the character's struggle and waiting in the face of the unknown and uncertainty. No one knows if Godot exists or whether he will come. No one knows who will abandon whom between Pozo and Lucky, who is abusing whom, and whether the story of the two thieves in the Bible is true, and if redemption exists. Hence, at the end of the play, despite Gogo and Dee Dee making another appointment to leave, they remain standing still. For them, waiting is meaning, waiting is life, and waiting is destiny. This sums up the entire plot of the play. Samuel Beckett's experience and literary ideas that led to the creation of Waiting for Godot are closely tied to his imaginative personality and his past experiences of loneliness. There are two main factors that contributed to shaping his personality. Firstly, politics and religion played a significant role. Beckett was born on April 13, 1906, on Good Friday, in a wealthy town about 15 kilometers south of Dublin, Ireland. Unlike the majority of the Irish population, who were Catholics, Beckett's family adhered to the Protestant faith. At that time, religion and nationalism were sensitive topics in Ireland. The Irish Catholics sought to break free from the rule of the Protestant English and establish an independent national state. This led to frequent and intense conflicts, and Beckett witnessed the aftermath of the Easter Rising, a rebellion for Irish independence, at the age of 10. The city of Dublin, which had been baptized in flames after the rebellion, left a lasting impression on him. The standoff between Catholics and Protestants gradually eased after Ireland gained formal independence in 1948. Growing up in such an environment, Beckett could easily feel the awkward situation of being a Protestant in Ireland. They were neither fully Irish nor entirely English, making it a difficult choice between supporting the religion of the English and backing the indigenous Irish nationalism. Beckett did not actively engage in the Irish independence movement like the poet Yeats, who shared a similar background, and he seldom involved political or culturally nationalist themes in his literary works. He chose to maintain a distant attitude towards real politics. Nevertheless, the dilemma of cultural identity and the resulting sense of being on the margins found expression in the underlying themes of his works, particularly his preference for isolated, marginalized, and rootless characters. The second factor that shaped Beckett's personality was his upbringing and early life experiences. His father was a successful quantity surveyor, and his mother was a nurse. Despite their wealth, his parents' marriage was unhappy, and they often lived apart. Beckett was close to his mother, but she died when he was only 14 years old. Her death left a profound impact on him, contributing to his sense of loneliness and solitude. Furthermore, Beckett was a shy and introverted child, which deepened his feelings of isolation. These factors, the political and religious background of his birthplace, and the personal experiences of loneliness and isolation, all played a crucial role in shaping Beckett's literary ideas and themes. Waiting for Godot reflects his contemplation on the human condition, the search for meaning in a seemingly absurd world, and the portrayal of characters who are constantly waiting and struggling with the existential uncertainties of life. Indeed, Beckett's family environment and personal traits played a significant role in shaping his literary themes and ideas. His father's practical and non-artistic nature, as well as the absence of exposure to artistic and literary circles in his upbringing, created a stark contrast to Beckett's sensitive and imaginative personality. He described his childhood as ordinary and felt a sense of loneliness despite his parents' efforts to make him happy. This theme of loneliness became a recurring motif in his later works. Despite his sensitive and imaginative nature, Beckett was not a frail or melancholic artist. He was athletic and excelled in sports like rugby and cricket during his school years. It's worth noting that being an intellectual or a writer doesn't necessarily mean being physically weak or socially withdrawn. While he may have experienced some degree of social anxiety, he was also socially engaged and maintained close relationships with significant literary figures like James Joyce. His friendship with Joyce played a crucial role in his entry into the literary world and had a lasting impact on his writing career. Although Beckett didn't overtly engage with political themes in his literary works, he was not completely detached from political realities. During World War II, he joined the resistance movement in Paris after the city fell to the Nazis and faced the risk of arrest. This shows that he was not indifferent to political events, but he chose not to make politics a central focus in his artistic expression. Ultimately, Beckett was like any ordinary person, but he had a higher capacity to endure loneliness and transform it into philosophical insights through his art. His works went beyond everyday experiences to reveal the existential condition of modern human beings. Through his literary explorations, he gave meaning to solitude and unveiled the complexities of human existence. Beckett's life journey came to an end in 1989 at the age of 83 in Paris. His passing marked the conclusion of his exploration of solitude and further solidified his legacy as one of the most influential playwrights and authors of the 20th century. Beckett's works have always been considered obscure and difficult to understand. Influenced by Joyce and the avant-garde movement in his early years, his novels were imbued with modernist sensibilities and an experimental spirit, which intimidated many readers. Adding to this, Beckett adhered to the principle of letting the work speak for itself and never provided explanatory interpretations of his creative intentions, leaving people without a clear path to approach his works. However, later on, Beckett had a sudden realization that Joyce had already gone too far on his heroic literary path, making it nearly impossible for others to surpass him. While having the idea is one thing, overcoming the anxiety of influence is another. It was only after World War II that Beckett truly completed the transformation of his creative style, which was manifested in two main aspects. Firstly, in terms of language, the change was evident. He originally wrote in English and then switched to French. Beckett did this to break free from the established patterns in his writing and to innovate in diction, syntax, and the structure of his works. Secondly, the change was reflected in his narrative style, as he abandoned the omniscient third-person perspective and turned to the more limited first-person perspective, while also abandoning the restrained and elusive writing style. With these changes, Beckett finally bid farewell to Joyce, relinquishing the ambition to become a literary prophet. Instead, he chose to come to terms with the limitations of self, humanity, and literature, and through skillful portrayals of ignorance and bewilderment, he created his own distinctive style. Next, let's summarize some of the features of the form and content of the play Waiting for Godot. In terms of form, Waiting for Godot abandons the classic four-act structure commonly found in traditional plays and instead adopts a repetitive structure, with the first act and the second act almost identical in terms of character, setting, and other aspects, except for some minor details. Beckett's primary purpose in doing this was to downplay the plot. Classic four-act plays typically have distinct structural functions for each act, corresponding to the development, climax, and conclusion of the plot. From ancient Greek tragedies like Oedipus Rex to Ibsen's A Doll's House in the 19th century, this kind of script structure creates a dramatic and engaging narrative that easily absorbs the audience. However, starting from the 20th century, playwrights like Chekhov deliberately toned down the plot, emphasizing the lyrical atmosphere of the script, allowing the audience to detach from the plot and observe the theatrical performance from a more reflective perspective. Although Chekhov's The Seagull was not well received by the contemporary audience at its premiere, it profoundly influenced Beckett and the representative figure of the theater of the absurd, Eugene Ionesco. Therefore, Beckett's play and the theater of the absurd both exhibit a tendency to downplay the plot or even eliminate it, which is also a significant reason why Beckett is regarded as a playwright of the absurdist movement. In addition, Beckett intentionally weakened the dramatic conflict in the play. According to Hegel, dramatic conflict refers to the clash between objectives and characters, which is the core element in classical drama, essential to make it truly a drama. For example, in Oedipus Rex, the prophecy of killing his father and marrying his mother is undoubtedly the central conflict of the script, driving the actions of the characters, and around which the entire plot unfolds. However, in Waiting for Godot, there is no clear-cut dramatic conflict. Why do Vladimir and Estragon wait for Godot? We don't know. Due to the weakened dramatic conflict, the actions and behaviors of the characters lack a solid foundation, appearing chaotic and absurd. The dialogue and actions lack logic. However, this apparent lack of logic is just superficial. As we mentioned before, the dialogue between the characters actually has hidden connections, and seemingly nonsensical actions hold symbolic meanings. Classical playwrights tend to make drama more like drama, emphasizing strong conflicts, clear themes, and intentionally creating theatrical scenes and plots. On the other hand, Beckett and his contemporaries want to make drama less like drama, so they conceal conflicts, downplay the plot, and normalize and humanize the drama. The former aims to let the audience experience emotional catharsis in the drama, while the latter wants the audience to engage in rational reflection. Comedy, in essence, is viewing life with a rational spirit, from a higher standpoint, discovering the absurdity and ridiculousness of life. In Waiting for Godot, Beckett wants to depict human loneliness and suffering, but he also emphasizes the comical and absurd aspects of the characters. The bantering dialogue, slightly lewd wordplay, and exaggerated gestures add a layer of comedy to the script. Beckett's purpose in doing this is not to create laughter but to use restrained humor and desperate laughter to scorn loneliness and suffering. Throughout Waiting for Godot, Beckett portrays absurdity and irrationality, but these are manifested under the scrutiny of a rational spirit, making it a deeper level of rationality. Beckett's contemplation of the absurd and irrational carries the desire for self-reflection and self-transcendence, while implicitly showing his attitude of confronting and resisting despair. While people have always been keen on discussing who Godot is, for Beckett, perhaps what matters most is the act of waiting itself. Waiting in the play signifies repetition. It is the predicament that Vladimir and Estragon cannot escape from, and it serves as a metaphor for the existential state of modern life. Their daily routine, 2 dots and a line, resembles endlessly waiting for Godot. In this repetition, certainty forms the foundation of meaning, while change signifies the loss of center and meaning, and the loss of security. Thus, the predicament of Vladimir and Estragon lies not only in not knowing who Godot is and why they wait, but also in the fact that Godot is different every day. It's like employees in an advertising company being frustrated not because the client's standards are too high, but because the standards keep changing every day. If we see Waiting for Godot as a parabolic and philosophical expression of life's scenarios, we can better understand the play and, in turn, understand our own lives. In conclusion, as an Irish writer, Beckett's Protestant background placed him in a culturally awkward position, and his family atmosphere kept him distant from politics while shaping his somewhat solitary personality, which became an important theme in his later works. Waiting for Godot is often regarded as the quintessential absurd play, and Beckett's ideas are frequently interpreted within the philosophical context of existentialism. While there are formal similarities between his script and absurd theater, Beckett did not embrace the value position of absurd theater. Regarding existentialism, Beckett viewed the freedom based on individual consciousness and self-choice as more like a utopia. He was more of a fatalist, inclined to believe that individuals are difficult to escape from the influence of environment, culture, lineage, religion, and other factors. Regarding the content of the play, Beckett focuses more on the theme of waiting rather than the identity of Godot. Through the use of repetitive structure, Beckett turns waiting into a metaphor for the human condition, revealing the absurdity and irrationality in contemporary life. It also points out how fragile and vulnerable our psychological foundations of certainty, meaning, and security are for survival. In Waiting for Godot, Beckett intentionally diminishes the plot, hides dramatic conflict, and uses the approach of comedy to portray tragic themes. While he depicts absurdity and irrationality, it is a deeper level of rationality, containing his desire for self-transcendence and the courage to confront despair. Well, that concludes the content for this episode. If you enjoyed my video, please click like, subscribe to my channel, and share it with your friends. Thank you.